Let's start. So
Okay.
good afternoon, task force members. Welcome to our third meeting. I am June Tulio of HDOA. I'm going to moderate this meeting. First, the agenda for today's meeting is as follows. So our consultants will be talking about their background.
Joe
Then,
Tall, you could come in. It's on. Oh, sorry.
so again, this is the agenda for today's meeting. First, the consultants will be discussing their background, then the ways hemp industry will benefit the state of Hawaii, the benefits in order of importance, and they will be talking about the four primary goals, and then where do CBD farmers fit into the picture and what do we need to understand from the CBD farmers. Then with that, they will be discussing the definition, then understanding of the current CBD industry in Hawaii and its potential for the state, then the clarity on size and end product for equipment and specific laws they want to change. Then lastly, the consultants will give the summary then before we will discuss our next steps. I'll be giving the um, podium to Char and Megan. Go ahead, Char.
Okay, thank you. Happy solstice, everybody. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background of why we are doing this particular task force. So as I said before, I've come from 25 years of small farming in the Midwest. Like you, I've had to find a type of high value crop. So to support my family, I developed a business of shipping replacement cattle, dairy heifers to the large dairies of the South. But much like the CBD market, that market crashed when the US went to war with Iraq in 2008 and the economy froze. So I had 125 heifers out on pasture, all pregnant, had to do something with them, took them 3 semis down to Texas to sell them at public auction and lost $50,000. So I had to pivot in buying high genetic cattle, flushing them for their embryos, which I then sold overseas.
Oh, don't worry about it.
So it'll be $5. Awesome.
Oh, and then, sorry, somebody was talking. So like you, it was a business that was regulated by laws, both interstate laws and also international laws. But what made it easy for me is that I was surrounded by an agricultural infrastructure. Everything I could possibly need was within 10 miles of my farm. So every day for the past 23 years that I've lived in Hawaii, I have been shocked by the lack of agricultural infrastructure in Hawaii. It is mind-boggling to me that so few people understand how politically and environmentally vulnerable we are in Hawaii. So what else has given me insight into this hemp issue is that I worked for 3 years as the COO of a factory in Vietnam that made high-end bamboo houses for the Hawaiian market, like $1 million houses out of bamboo. So a similar thing is using hemp in the building industry. So I have a deep background in the building industry, including 8 trips to China to their incredible industrial systems that they have there. And when I returned 14 years ago, my son-in-law picked me up at the airport to tell me I was going to have my first grandchild. So that put me smack into climate change. I just went into studying that because I was so concerned about it. Now I have 3 grandchildren. And then also 14 years ago, I started a nonprofit called Food Security Hawaii. And during that time, in those 14 years, I was working on biomass pyrolysis, which is a type of project similar to making fuels out of hemp. You can also use pyrolysis to make fuels from hemp. So I was, working with project finance and making performance and that sort of thing. And then when I learned about industrial hemp, it ticked all of the boxes. It ticks the climate change box and it ticks the food security boxes. And so at that time, like you, I became a believer in hemp. Hemp is truly a wonderful crop and an amazing crop. And I want everybody to know that. So our purpose in this report is to show, one, how supporting the growth of a hemp industry will benefit the state of Hawaii. That's our primary goal. And this is in the order of importance, in at least for Megan and I. First, it's soil remediation, because it's because of hemp that allows us to grow other food crops at scale, mechanically with tractors. So because it cleans up the soil toxins and increases the crop productivity. Rotations with things like hemp, corn, soybeans, potatoes, lentils, squash, these things are at scale. That's true food security, and hemp is the ideal thing for bringing that soil into the ability to till it and harvest at scale. So in second order of importance is to take the harvested hemp, create other products that replace those products we're currently importing to Hawaii, building products, bioplastics, animal bedding. Thirdly, for the production of products, we must make Hawaii more self-sufficient, so we also create economies of scale that create jobs and livelihoods. So our four primary goals are to, one, support food security, replacing sugar and pineapple. Two, production of raw materials. Three, using those raw materials to spawn a variety of industries. And fourthly, industries that will create livelihoods by creating economies of scale. Now, where do the CBD farmers fit into all of this? Of course, by growing cannabinoid hemp, it's in a crop rotation that benefits, food security. Hawaiian farmers need to replace products that are currently being imported into the state. And thirdly, we need to help Hawaiian farmers to develop high value branding together with a statewide Made in Hawaii brand. Those are the things that will benefit. And we want to see localized processing equipment that will allow CBD farmers to produce product at scale. And this means we need to help legislature understand the importance of law and enforcement regulations. So in this call, we would like you all to understand that CBD hemp is one of the 5 basic sectors that we are in that are important to cover: building materials, fuels, food, CBD, and bioplastic. And what we need today to understand in this call is we need to clarify the terms, the definition of terms. We understand that this group wants CBD hemp to be called industrial hemp. And although that makes our job more difficult and more difficult for the true industrial folks, hemp folks, we're willing to try to frame it in such a way that we can all agree upon. So can we agree that industrial hemp has 2 classes, both under the 0.3% THC? Can we call them, one is agricultural hemp that will require thousands of acres of production, and the other one, horticultural hemp, that will be grown in tens of acres for a higher value market with more intensive inputs and more intensive labors.
Hey,
Is that
Charlie,
right? Yeah.
Gail. Yeah, I just want to, well, let me know when we can jump in, because I think there's been a little bit of probably confusion, which is primarily due to the time constraint, not your guys. You guys have been phenomenal in trying to gather all this information.
But the purpose of these calls, we'll get to that. I just want to state what we want to do.
Yeah.
So secondly, get clear on the idea of the type of cooperative processing equipment that will benefit you individually and as well as the statewide industry. So yeah, we'll get into those questions. And then what specific laws or enforcement of regulations do you want changed? And then fourth, we want to understand the size of the CBD industry currently and its potential. That's been hard for us to find. So let's start with the definition of terms. And it was actually Grant that suggested the concept of agricultural hemp and horticultural hemp. And I think that's a really good neutral way to call them. And that way they still both come under industrial hemp. So is that what you wanted to talk about, Gail?
Yeah, the nomenclature is a little bit important because of public perception and support, and even in the legislature, for sure. And then also it really comes down to the nuts and bolts with regard to regulation too. So yeah, thank you.
Does anyone, originally we were calling it medicinal hemp, but people don't want us to call it medicinal hemp. Are you okay if we refer to it as horticultural hemp?
Well,
So
currently, I just want to chime in really quick, Shar.
Pardon?
In speaking, I just want to chime in really quick. In speaking with the DOH, their definition, and one of you guys can clarify this, is manufactured hemp is what they're calling hemp that's the cannabinoid side of it is manufactured hemp. And I don't know if you guys want to chime in. So, which can be confusing because in my brain, manufactured sounds like industrial. So I don't know if,
Yeah, this is
some of
Greg
them-
with
yeah.
DOH, that the definition or the, you know, the broad term manufactured hemp products, just those three words string together sequentially can mean a wide variety of products. So as in anything regulatory, it's really important that you actually read the definition, go to the actual law, read the definition. So when you see then in the content of the law and then the rules, when the expression manufactured hemp product is used many, many times in the pages of the law, you now in your brain, it's framed as this narrow set of edibles and topicals. And it's only those narrow set of edibles and topicals that law was addressing, the current law addresses, as well as the rules. But yeah, I understand the idea that when you just look at manufactured hemp product, it implies anything that's manufactured from hemp. But in regulations, you know, you have to try to simplify as best as possible. This industry is new, and there's no real consensus on terminology across the board in the cannabinoid hemp space. So everyone is still feeling their way through it. From a regulatory standpoint, I would say that the states have been moving more towards the expression of cannabinoid hemp products for those public health agencies or those agencies that are dealing with the products that are ingested or applied to your skin and contain cannabinoids. So that's been a trend we've been seeing across the states.
Could I add to it as a farmer? We are all under the USDA regulations, so I follow the USDA Farm Bill for the definitions. So currently, we're all industrial hemp. In the new Farm Bill, they'll have more definitions, but we could spend the entire hours speaking just on definitions. But I noticed that Megan's talk at the county, it mentioned herd being grown not from the flower hemp, but herd is usually grown from the flower hemp. And that's why in Hawaii, it's still so much more lucrative. And if you compare commodity crops like Kona coffee, Hawaii is the only state that can grow coffee. All the other states can grow herd for 40 cents or grain cleaned and whole hemp parts certified organic for $6 wholesale at most a pound. So if it's I just don't want to. I'm most passionate about the food, the fiber, the housing, the supercapacitors, all the other ones. I just don't want it to be singling out CB cannabinoid farmers.
I don't think it's singling out, but I think that we need to, in order to move forward as an industry, because cannabinoid hemp is regulated differently than true industrial hemp, like it needs to be defined and some like clarified so that like you can't just say hemp because it's regulated different. So I think that's why we're just trying to see like, is there a consensus on how we talk about it in the local legislature, or because it is very different, you know, the needs and the processing and the rules and regulations around, you know, DOH is only cannabinoid hemp. They're not there when it's industrial hemp, you know, if you're making hempcrete. So it's different regulatory bodies. So I think we're just trying to see like, is there a consensus on what the names could be, or And I think we even need to find out because like you said, Robert, under the federal law right now, it's just industrial hemp is everything, but it's gonna hopefully get clarified in this new farm bill. So maybe whatever that is what the state ends up using. So it's going with federal laws, you know, if it's industrial hemp and cannabinoid hemp or whatever they end up calling it. So maybe it's waiting for the new farm bill to be finalized so that we understand what that looks like, because that might help just on its own. And then maybe the state could further clarify if need be.
You know,
for our
Megan,
own.
this Gail, I think it really comes down to the nuts and bolts of regulations because the names are, I mean, they make us feel better, you know, we're not like being combined with like a Schedule I drug. So in some ways, naming does matter a great deal, especially when you look at like how kombucha and lion's mane and all these other on-farm products are handled. You know, but really what it comes down to, no matter what the definition is how are we regulated? Are we going to be combined with marijuana or not? That's the main thing. And then how do we handle intoxicating products, right? It's not what most of our farmers make at all, you know, but we've got all these imports that are coming in. So how does the state going to handle all the illegal imports coming in? And under the proposed marijuana legislation, you know, there was intoxicating and non-intoxicating cannabinoid products. And while that differentiation, I think, is going to be super important, the sticky point was the fact that we were combined with marijuana under one regulatory agency, because what was completely neglected, even though we brought experts to the table over and over again, is that when you combine when we combine cannabinoid, hemp, and marijuana together at all, farmers lose business services. And the policies in the states upon which these policies are being developed by the AG's office, who are really nice people in the AG's office, but these states don't collect data on their own policy outcomes. So even Oregon doesn't collect data on its own policies. And so when we're on the ground talking to experts who do collect data, like Bo Whitney, who most people in this crowd know, or we're talking to farmers on the ground in these other states, and they are losing their insurance and they have lost their banking because of the combining of regulatory structures. That's where we, you know, throw up our hands and just, you know, full stop on trying to stop this legislation.
Can I ask a quick question though? When you say combining the regulatory, the DOH already is regulating the hemp industry and in our state, the medicinal cannabis, right?
They're separate.
But it's the same state agency, correct? So what would change?
Program.
And again, I don't want to talk too much about regulations because we have a lot of we really want to talk about processing and infrastructure, because we keep deep diving into regulations, but this report is really about what does the infrastructure look like so that you guys can farm and get your stuff processed and all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to get too far into regulations and cannabis and all that stuff, because we really want to focus on what you guys need and what we can put in this report to make sure that you guys have what you need as far as infrastructure goes. The regulations, that's kind of a different conversation, and we're going to include a lot of your guys' feedback for that in the report. So don't think that we're holding any of that back. But I want to make sure that on this call, we can get the information that we need to make sure that the processing side and what you guys need to actually make these products goes into the report. Because I know Shar has a bunch of other questions she wants to ask.
But also we want to make certain that an outcome from this thing is that there's a task force that works together with the DOH to get the wording perfectly so that when you give it to the legislature, everybody signs off on it. You can go to them and say, we all agree, now you guys make it happen. But that's not really a part of this. I mean, we're putting the input and suggesting that be the follow-up.
Yeah, that's an excellent recommendation, Char. We fully support longer time frame. We always appreciate, I mean, Greg has been incredible to engage with over the years. That's being able for him to be able to be allowed to free up to interact with us more, and other folks in DOH. That's super super important. But I want to be very clear, and I think we have all been very clear regarding the we are losing investment even for industrial hemp because of the continual flux and regulation. So we do not want any bills that are brought forward this next year that really have to do with hemp unless it's small cleanup, on CBD, but nothing dramatic. I mean, that, I think you've heard that
No.
over and over again.
No, we just understand that, we understand that the AG changed some things that you all had in the bill, and you want it changed back. And there's one redundancy that Jediah wants taken out. So we're listening to what you guys want, and it seems like it's a very small thing for you guys to work together, get that done, and then we're not talking about new legislation.
Yeah, I just, reading the tea leaves, we're pretty sure that the AG's coming back with this, and maybe the agencies are too, with this large marijuana bill. So hopefully not.
Yeah, but this group is here to support you in pushing back on the AG. That's all I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah, no, we get that, Char. We totally get that. I just wanted to clarify that we really don't, except for maybe minor cleanup bill in cooperation with DOH, giving them some kind of authority or something. We really don't want to be in the legislature the next 2 years. We want to farm.
Sure, of course, yeah, for sure. We want that for you too. And I have to say that I really appreciate the difficulty for people in the legislature to understand what hemp is. Because when I first started learning about it, I go, wow, it's like the elephant with the trunk and the legs and the tail and the husk and tusk, and it's an amazingly diversified crop and difficult to understand. Even when you see I've gone to the processing plants and they put in hemp on one end and all these products come out the other end. I go, how is that even possible? But it is possible. So it's not an easily understood product.
So I have a quick question. It's Liam Gim from Department of Health. Are we going to have two definitions for hemp, like industrial hemp, meaning hempcrete, other building materials and things like that? And then will we have a separate definition for cannabinoid hemp? Because I think that's really been the issue throughout the country, especially after the Farm Bill of 2018. Is there going to be a distinction between the two different crops?
And what is your recommendation, Liam?
I think that there is a distinction. I'm sorry, that doesn't work well. There's a distinction between the two different products, that if you're making an industrial hemp product, hempcrete and everything, I think Gail has said there's 65,000 different uses for hemp. And I agree, hemp could do everything. George Washington was growing it, Thomas Jefferson, all of them growing it. But I think there is a distinct different market, different rules and regulations for cannabinoid hemp. I think we can all agree that whenever you add in cannabinoid, and it's the same molecules as cannabis, that there are different level of restrictions, regulations, monitoring. It's a whole different creature than hempcrete. So I was just wondering if there's going to be two separate definitions for products that will be coming out.
So that's really why I brought it up, is because it would be very easy to do it that way. That was our original thought. We were talking about medicinal hemp and industrial hemp, but Gail was very clear that she wants the cannabinoid hemp to stay under the industrial.
I never actually proposed that definition, Char. I think there was a little confusion. I think Grant did. What matters to me regarding names, what matters to us is what actually is happening on the ground with regard to regulation, because that's where we get impacted, where we can lose business services or things become too expensive to even do, and then we'll just continue this large import market, or there's going to be no enforcement on the illegal products. And so I think it's good to honor it as an agricultural crop, because it has.
Well, that's why I think we should have a definition of.
It's why we have
I
to
think that's why we
honor it as an
definition of
agricultural crop, because it has so much to do with food security here. Because
but we're not talking about food security and talking about food products. We're talking about.
we are, because if farmers can't make money, we've lost 769 farmers in the last 5 years. CBD farming can be part of that food security, because it doesn't take a lot to make a little sideline product. It really doesn't. What we've got to do is get some stability in the rules and processing and some processing infrastructure so more farmers can participate in this like something $50 million market that's here. And these are food farmers. Food farmers are the ones that brought forward the hemp industry. Even in the 1990s, you know, we started the Why Hemp Council. It was farmers that brought that forward for all the sustainability reasons. So it is tied to food security because food farmers are going out of business like crazy because they don't have value-added crops. They don't have things that they can make into products that have any kind of margins on it. That's just a hard fact. And so we've been singing this song since like 2014 about tying CBD food to food security for our farmers here. It's absolutely the case. And that's the truth for farmers. For the people that are importing and slapping a Hawaii label on it, well, they're not farmers.
Absolutely. I am sorry I had an internet connection issue during Megan's response, but I agree completely with what Gail said. And my main thing is we are already regulated by the federal government. The state government should just use the federal definitions and then try to help us. Like as a food farmer, if I'm doing a non-potentially hazardous value-added temporary food establishment, there isn't even any permit. If there's a permit for a food manufacturing less than 1,000 square feet, I think it's about $200. It's $500 for the hemp processing. And it's it might have been covered, but we didn't want to be originally in under the medical cannabis control office. I believe it was Jared who said did that. He decided to put us under there. So I just feel even though the Department of Ag, Sharon's great at getting support, but all of us that have been growing hemp for so long, like Shar said, there's not only a lack of infrastructure, which is a huge issue and a huge lift of itself, and that's what we should be focusing on, but there's active resistance where instead of the state being, oh, how can I help these hemp farmers with a hemp food or a hemp value added product? Because the vast majority of hemp herd is from hemp flower.
But even yesterday, like on the Maui County meeting, Robert, that you were on, a lot of it is just people don't know much about hemp. They don't even know that you can build a house with it. You know, a lot of people in the legislature have no idea. And that's why, as you heard yesterday on that meeting, they were very interested and they were basically like, what can we do to support you guys? Just tell us, you know? And I think that truly is what it boils down to. When you talk about hemp to people, they get excited and because they don't really know much about it. And it is a new industry. It was just taken off of the Schedule I drug in 2018. So it's a newly legal plant, first of all, and everyone's trying to kind of figure out what to do with it. And everyone went into CBD and it burned and crashed. The whole country did that. And now we're looking at industrial hemp because that can have a broader reach and include cannabinoids. Like we're not saying get rid of, but I think like we need to really look holistically at the entire industry and what it can do for the state. And you know, we're spending a lot of time on cannabinoids and regulations and all this stuff, but there's so many other sectors that, you know, we need to talk about. And, you know, but for this call specifically, Shar really wanted to understand what the processing needs are for you guys. Like, and also, Gail, I emailed you about this, but I'd like to open it up to everyone else. It's really hard to understand what the current industry looks like here because there's no data. When you look at the USDA annual report, there's a D next to it because there's no data. And so we don't even know what the existing market looks like. And then from what I understand, the FSA, the Farm Something Administration that falls under the USDA, the ones that collect the reports from all of the USDA licensed farmers, they don't have any reports. I guess not many of the Hawaii farmers, I'm not saying all of them, but not many of them are turning in these reports saying like how many acres they're growing, what seeds they're using, how much they harvested. And so we're not even registering. So it's really hard to talk about the cannabinoid industry when we don't even know what the existing industry looks like, because there's no data. And I don't know if that's you guys not filling out the forms, or we just don't have as many farmers as we think, or they're a lot smaller, or it's because of all of these roadblocks, which I'm sure is a big contributor to this. But if anyone has any idea, like on their islands, like Gail, I don't know, just coming from the Hemp Farmers Association, if you know, like what is the membership even with the Hawaii Hemp Farmers Association? So we have an idea of what does your group look like and what do you guys do so that we understand kind of how they're supporting the hemp industry, because that helps us just to understand, because you guys are living and breathing this. And so any information you can give us, any data, like even Bo, if you guys have any data from him, like we need that to back up all of this stuff, and we need to be really concise in our
Okay.
report. So anything you guys can give to that, I would love to hear anything.
I can help you with that at 2:30 if you want to just focus on infrastructure now.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's totally fine.
Yeah, whatever you do.
But I think it does come down, but can I ask everyone on here who are hemp farmers, do you fill out those reports from the FSA?
Yeah, I fill out those FSA reports, and my reports are filled out as certified organic.
Okay.
Also, you mentioned in the beginning that you reached out to Gail to find out who the hemp farmers were, but that's also publicly available information. And there are a lot of hemp farmers that are not involved in this task force that really should be involved in this task force.
We
And-
had trouble getting their information. Yes, we have the USDA list. I have it's the business names only.
Yeah,
So
I know that,
we
but
don't have their information, their contact info. We don't even, that it's been very hard to get
That's-
contacts for people.
That's why it's good to have outsiders look at the industry, but farmers in the industry, we know pretty much what the other farmers need, what we need. We knew who they are. So I think that's why it would be good to have another one that is mostly farmer driven, because we know the other farmers. But the reason it's a D, it's that way even for papaya, I believe, and which is a pretty big industry. All Hawaii farmers, like Shar was saying in the beginning, other states really support the farmers. I was in an agribility conference in Georgia where farming is a huge part of their state economy, and they really support the farmers. Hawaii doesn't put any money really towards the Department of Agriculture and into the farmers. So the studies about the numbers of farmers, like even other crops, they don't have that information for the most part. And that's the problem, because it's like we have these tricks like Scotty was saying, and I use as well, free labor, free land. And even with that, if you do the spreadsheet and you pay yourself everything, it's not profitable. So we really need to, I can help in that 2:30 call as well, but we really need to focus on how the government can directly support farmers, because we really need financial assistance. And like you said earlier, education, like that Got Milk campaign.
Thanks, Robert. We have a lot of value.
So
Maybe
let's
just
talk.
real quick for future, maybe we can have you back, we get more money for you guys, which would be really great. It's nice to have an outside facilitator. It really is. You can do a second level FOIA, I forget what they're called at the federal level, a Freedom of Information request from USDA. And the first level just gets you the contact company information. And then then they'll only give you that. And then you can go back for second level and request contact information. If you give a really good reason why, they often will give you that second level. We did that about 5 years ago, I think, or I can't remember when it was, when the USDA first came out, the stuff we have is probably no longer good anymore, but it takes longer, maybe 2 months to get it, but it is possible to get the direct contact information for the hemp farmers.
Thanks, Gil. That's good to know.
So since our first task force meeting, I started looking into processing equipment for cannabinoids. Before that, I was looking into industrial hemp. I have a lot of information about that, including I've visited several factories. But the cannabinoid stuff is, you know, a whole different ballgame. But I have a lot of information. But I really need to know what your needs are. You know, at what level, what size of processing equipment do you want? And do you want just extraction, or there's some sort of distillation, some sort of end product that you want to make? And would that equipment also be good for people that want to make essential oils and that sort of thing? So it's multidisciplinary.
Char, that's excellent point that some of this equipment can be used. And I think Brittany's brought this up before. Maybe she wants to speak to it. The extraction equipment could be used for other
Right.
yeah, for other crops here in Hawaii. I think that Greg has brought up before just the issue with potentially around regulatory and cross contamination, and does the equipment have to be completely separated out, or could there be a cleaning process, you know, that would be approved that would allow the sharing of equipment, which kind of brings us back to the food hub spaces too, you know, if we're able to use their electricity and their clean kitchens to bottle and do things. Is there a process by which we could have somehow certified or you know, self-attestation so that we could then use these facilities where other things are being produced?
Yeah, Greg here again. I mean, it's not within the Office of Medical Cannabis Control and Regulation. It is within DOH. The food safety programs, there's two primary ones. Well, there's two. Food safety branch, which used to be known as sanitation. They're the ones when you go out to eat and you see the placards on the restaurants. So that's the agency that would regulate from a permitting standpoint and inspector standpoint and food hubs. And again, I only say that I'm not, you know, I don't work for them. I work within the Department of Health. I don't work for them. But if you are making a product in that food hub that falls under their jurisdiction, then you would need to go to the food safety branch on your island and obtain a permit. That's why I brought up in the last meeting, Gail, as you said, you would want to work with them to make sure that the presence of a cannabinoid hemp processing activity going on there under our program's permitting allowance that won't conflict somehow with the shared equipment. So if there may be a mechanism by which the equipment can be cleaned, but you would have to come up with that and present that to the food safety branch as a possible solution to that concern. So that would be my suggestion. Is normally the term is a variance, you know, that we can't meet this rule. So we can't meet this rule as written, but we have a solution. And then, but again, you would have to work with that program, the food safety branch, to ensure that your presence in that facility won't disrupt the permit for the other only food manufacturers that are permitted. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Hey,
Greg.
thanks. I was wondering, we were talking earlier about the issues that we could potentially face with hemp being under the OMCR. And then you were just mentioning that we would have to go with the food service branch anyway. The food service branch already regulates things that are consumed, and hemp as a seed or a microgreen, that's already under the FSB. Couldn't cannabinoid hemp also be under FSB? And then that way the processors would have the already familiar color code violation things. Because I think another thing that could be scaring away people from having their products processed in the state of Hawaii is there's kind of regulatory uncertainty. I'm not sure how violations are handled in the Act 233. It says it could be up to 10,000, and if hemp farmers aren't profitable, $10,000 fine could be very bad.
So yeah, I'm sorry, does someone else want to speak?
Aloha. This is Brittany. I'd like to speak, but you can go ahead and finish your thought, and then I'll hop on after.
Okay, Greg here. I was just going to address Robert's question about the barriers and the separation between cannabinoid hemp edibles versus conventional foods that don't contain cannabinoids. That really is why, to be perfectly blunt, why this is not allowed at a federal level. This is why FDA doesn't regulate or allow cannabinoids in food, which is why their website's been clear since the Farm Bill passed. And the Farm Bill itself says the growing of hemp and the use of hemp in any product that is regulated by FDA, you still have to go to FDA and get approval from them. This law, the Farm Bill, doesn't supersede FDA's authority to regulate the products that they regulate. So that's the hurdle, right? So real quickly, CBD as a molecule, as a compound, not THC, not CBG, not CBN, not any other, not terpenes, CBD itself is a prescription drug that FDA has approved. So they have existing laws that have been on the books at the federal level for decades that prohibit the use of a prescription drug in a food. So that's why CBD, which was the original, like everyone associates hemp with CBD, but there's obviously other cannabinoids that are marketable. That's why the primary reason why it can't be allowed in food. Additionally, why it can't be then marketed as a dietary supplement at the federal level is similar. You can't put a prescription drug, CBD, in a dietary supplement. So the next thing is that you would have to go to FDA and say, hey, I want to use CBG. Well, if your CBG doesn't have any THC, you might have a fighting chance on that. But you have to go to FDA and ask for that allowance to use it as a dietary supplement. My understanding is they reviewed a couple applications for that allowance, and they've failed because it's hard to get all the THC out. And again, THC is still federally illegal, so FDA can't, arbitrarily allow it a certain amount in there. There still needs some things that need to be done. So that's the federal high-level view oversight on why the states had to get in front of federal food safety regulations and carve out an allowance for products in each state, in their respective state, Hawaii, to allow these products to legally exist. It has nothing to do with the growing and the farming. It has to do with the manufacturing of a product that came out of that plant. And if that is intended to be ingested or rubbed on your skin, that's what the 2020 law allows and carves out, but it's separate and unique from conventional foods. So at the local level, going back down to food safety branch, right, within Hawaii, they mirror FDA in terms of only things that can go on in that facility when you're making food, selling food, cooking food, serving food, are approved food additives, approved food ingredients. None of the cannabinoids, CBG, CBN, pick a letter. None of them are approved by FDA for use in food, conventional food. The only substance currently that is allowed from the hemp is hemp seed. So dehulled, not viable, but dehulled hemp seed powder protein, and hemp seed oil, not hemp oil, hemp seed oil, without the addition of any added cannabinoids that came from the flowering plant. Those enjoy FDA allowances in the food supply, and it's referred to as generally recognized as safe. So you'll hear that term GRAS. Microgreens, to your point specifically, Robert, is relatively newer because the hemp seed GRAS status occurred in 2018 or 19. So that's been around for a while. I think the hiccup here in Hawaii is, since as you've made clear, Robert, USDA regulates the farming of hemp. So as you're growing hemp and it's in the microgreen stage of growth, a handful of inches, does USDA have a testing protocol? Because you're not growing hemp, actually you're growing cannabis until it's been laboratory determined to meet USDA regulations. So that's the first hurdle. If USDA can get your microgreen at that level of growth somehow compliant with USDA rules, then it can enjoy moving into the manufacturing side of the equation, where you've cut it, you've washed it, you've bagged it, you've labeled it under the food safety branch, and even FDA, you can interstate market start to open up for you on that. So that first hurdle here in Hawaii is answering that question from USDA. Can a hemp farmer, a USDA hemp farmer in Hawaii, grow hemp up to, you know, that small stage, that microgreen stage, and get it tested for cannabinoids, which again seems ridiculous, right? I think we all know that. There won't be any. You cut it, you send it to the lab, there won't be any. But if USDA governs when something is hemp. So that's been my observation about where the barrier is with respect to microgreens. Once you can get it, that USDA designation of saying this is USDA compliant hemp, you start to then enjoy a much wider, it's a food now, just like hemp seeds. Now you're in the space of a food, and you can go to FSB and you can get a permit, and you can, you know, market your product that way. I don't know if that helps explain a little bit further.
Mahalo, yes. USDA does allow what they call an alternative sampling protocol for microgreens, so it is allowed through. That is a very, like you said earlier about it's not allowed for food, the cannabis, like it's just the seed oil and the microgreens if you go through the extra hoops. But is it possible, is it just easier to do it under the OMCR if you do introduce, like you said, the states are ahead of the FDA as far as edible things?
No, it's already, you're already excluded. When I say you, I mean a farmer that's growing microgreens.
Right.
That microgreen doesn't meet the definition of a manufactured hemp product.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. So that way you're not even you wouldn't be under it. The law would have to change in order to put you under us, which actually you don't need. You just need to get that USDA compliant that you're actually hemp. You've grown hemp, and then you go to the food safety branch and you say, I've grown microgreens. I'm growing microgreens. They're USDA compliant. Here's my evidence of that. And you work with them to ensure that you have a facility that meets their rules, which are going to be very similar to the rules for manufacturing cannabinoid hemp products, GMPs, labeling, safe food handling practices, et cetera. So it's still within Department of Health, but it wouldn't be OMCCR because the law was crafted specifically to capture those products that contain cannabinoids that are not legally allowed federally. That's why that carve out had to be made, or else we wouldn't be having this conversation. Cannabinoids would just be seen as allowed in the food supply in unlimited amounts.
Right.
So,
I had the microgreen figured out. I was just the other part was the other but you clarified it. It's pretty difficult for FSB to regulate the cannabis side, or the cannabinoid side, because it's not
approved as a food. Yeah, it's not approved as a food ingredient. There's barriers because CBD in particular is a drug. THC, of course, is federally. There's just other things in that once it's a cannabinoid that need to be looked at individually. What cannabinoid are you specifically talking about? And then you can identify what the barrier is federally. And it hasn't been solved yet, right? So that's why the states are trying to get into that space and have gotten into that space. And why we have gravitated towards that term cannabinoid hemp, because to try to contain the conversation about where the public health concerns may be from a manufacturing, labeling, testing standpoint for something edible or topical.
Right,
So
and
this
that's
is,
the USDA term too, CB hemp, shorthand, so.
Okay,
s-
let's,
that's
can we
good.
let, who, was it Brittany, someone else speak? Because I want to
yeah.
make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. I think Scotty wanted to speak as well. So after Brittany, I think.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to add a few things as far as that were discussed. I had a hard time unmuting my phone earlier and now I'm able to talk. So bear with me. There's a couple things I just wanted to share from my perspective throughout this call. So first of all, I just want to clarify that THC federally is legal as long as it's from a hemp source. Otherwise, the THC found in hemp that is 0.3% or less would be illegal. So by definition, THC from a hemp source is legal. It's just not legal if it's from a marijuana source. And then CBD, I understand that it is a pharmaceutical, but that is an isolated CBD. So when we talk about an extract from the hemp plant, the hemp flower, that is a full spectrum, product, a lot of people refer to it as CBD, and really that language is inappropriate. It might be a strain that is higher in CBD, but unless it is isolated CBD, it is actually a full spectrum extract. And so just to be aware, as we're all talking about this, that is a big difference. So for all of us just to kind of realize. And then, I just also wanted to get back to Shar's question earlier about our processing needs. And I think that, that is such a complicated topic. I mean, there's a lot of individual preferences that would come into play of why somebody would want to make an ice water extract versus rosin versus ethanol extraction versus CO2 or hydrocarbon. They're all going to end up with a different product that is going to be more or less suitable to use in various ways. So that's a very individualized preference. But I just wanted to kind of plant the seed that if the state were to get involved with helping provide processing equipment for hemp farmers to have access to so that we can make more value-added products, I think that it would be prudent to have some sort of certification. For example, when you do food handling, you become a certified food handler, and it's to make sure that you're doing that in a safe way. And so again, each type of extraction method and processing equipment is going to be totally unique in the kind of the standard operating procedures that would be relevant to that type of equipment. And so if somebody's only ever made, ice water extract, would it be safe for them to just say, you know what, I want to make, CO2 extract and it's under this high pressure and it's a totally new thing? Or would it be safer for them to have to take some sort of course to get certified in using that equipment so that way they can operate it safe and make a product that is high quality? So those are just a few things. And then getting back to really early on in the conversation when we were talking about definitions of whether or not we want to be called industrial hemp, if it's hemp that's being grown for cannabinoids. I just would like to say, as a farmer, I think that whatever definitions are used in the future, that it's important for farmers who are growing hemp primarily for CBD production are not precluded from being able to use the waste, essentially, of after they extract the cannabinoids for other applications. I understand that the scale in which you're growing, if you're trying to make hempcrete, for example, is going to be much larger than you might end up with if you're just focusing on really boutique cannabinoid production. But we still should be able to, as a farmer, be able to say, this is my kind of A grade product that I'm shooting for, but I also want to be able to make these other products from kind of the byproduct of the crop that I'm growing. just again, to make it so nothing's going to waste and that we can have lots of different revenue sources from hemp. Thank you.
Have you identified, there's really good points, by the way. I'm sorry, I see, hey, your name again, oh, Brittany, sorry, Brittany, thanks. Is there anything that you're aware of in rules that precludes you from using the waste for other means? Because I'm not aware of anything on our DOH side that would preclude you from using.
Not currently, but I guess I'm just concerned about if we're talking about changing the definition of hemp to somehow differentiate between industrial hemp and cannabinoid hemp, that I would want to make sure that hemp that is grown first and foremost for cannabinoid production would still be allowed to then be used for industrial applications once those cannabinoids are extracted. That's all. It's just making sure that the language is such that it allows for that as we're potentially modifying these definitions moving towards the future.
Yeah, really, really good point. Generally, and this has been my experience in working in regulations for over 20 years, is attorneys are always involved in this. Definitions are usually broad, and I'm just giving you stuff that I've learned. Generally broad, meaning this is, manufactured hemp products are these things. It's actually fairly narrow, but in that example, industrial hemp means anything, the hemp plant that's grown by a USDA farmer. That's the definition. Then the body of the law, the A, B, C, D, will then have the specific, and this goes for rules too, it would have the specific prohibitions or limitations or restrictions and criteria. So a very good point, Brittany, is that you don't want a definition to lead someone to believe they couldn't use the waste for other purposes. Where that could be captured doesn't have to be in the definition. It would be explained out specifically in the body of the law or the rules that says waste material, from extraction of cannabinoids, etc., is allowed to be used for other industrial purposes. There's language to that effect. If that's to see it kind of in writing, I think that's something that's important to look forward going forward as we're parsing through all of the various ways hemp can be used. That
absolutely makes sense. And I think that there's also like the potential to see hemp building materials as an opportunity to perhaps use a hot crop. Like, for example, if I were to grow a hemp crop and it came up hot, like I could remediate it and I could blend it all together and then, but I could also have the option of making a building material with it and the cannabinoids are rendered useless. You know what I mean? Like it's not something that somebody is going to be smoking hempcrete. So right. Just as another option of like, as we're looking towards the future of how we can use hemp in ways that nothing has to go to waste and that there is a viable industry, to have all these different options, I think is really great.
Great point. I just want to end with this. What you just brought up, we'll touch on aspects of USDA, of course, because again, as I kind of said, my understanding of the USDA regulatory program is they determine their rules via testing, determine when you've grown hemp. And as you just said, if it's a hot product, came back above 0.3, then it was never hemp. It was tested at above hemp. So some conversation will probably have to be at the federal level to allow a mechanism that you're just suggesting, that USDA would allow a farmer that has a slightly high product, maybe not an 8% THC or a 5% THC D9 product, but maybe slightly elevated, but it could be channeled into an industrial use and non-cannabinoid use. So it's a great idea. And certainly this is not a DOH, issue. I'm just trying to lend some awareness to how I kind of understand how this big picture is kind of operating. USDA still controls jurisdiction over when something is hemp at the farming level. And then the states pick it up after that with respect to the products that are made. So great idea. So you might have to work a little bit with NED at the state level from that narcotic perspective, but I think something could probably be worked out with them. It's really just making sure USDA, much like Robert Bentz's issue with microgreens, like does USDA have a testing protocol or an alternative testing mechanism by which he can get his microgreens to be determined hemp? So that's a great idea.
Is Scotty gonna jump in?
Yeah, hi. I was just waiting for my chance here.
It's your chance. Go for it.
Okay, great. So that's why I stay away from the CBD stuff. Too much headache and all of that stuff, anything you put in your mouth. So anyway, I just wanted to go right down the list here. We're on my farm today. Here's my containers. I sat in so many conversations like this for years, but I'm just gonna do it. These containers come in, they serve as our storage. We're looking at probably converting one into a dryer for seeds, a wash and pack or a processing. We process food in one of the containers, wash and pack there. This is our hemp container, but in between, we want to put a roofing with solar panels and enclose it so that we can have a nice warehouse. I know McKelly has a really nice one on his farm, but you know, without the investment and the funding, you know, we can't really you know, do the things. We just gotta kind of jury rig everything. My hemp farmer is right there. We'll get a closer look when we go up. But we're also doing workforce development because you talk about education. Here's a lot of the teenagers that we have that come to the farm. They already planted food, and then now we're going to be planting hemp, or they're going to be working with hemp products now. But I think the biggest thing for the hemp farmers, as far as fiber and herd, you know, we need equipment. We need the proper attachments. Here's our little processing. We don't have a roof yet, but hempcrete is being made. We're mixing hemp. We're doing hemp paper today with the students. We're using a generator. So yeah, we need processing equipment. We need the funding to get it. Here's our field that has our first, there's about 3 acres of hemp seeds already put in the ground. Way down there, I don't think you can see them, but that's our agronomist, actual licensed certified agronomist strictly for hemp. He was on the Colorado Department of Ag. My hemp farmer here is actually from Montana. She's actually built her own hempcrete house. And we got a lot of great ideas, but what we need is the funding. But for the funding that I think we need, rather than the state buying it, let's create grants and significant grants that are specifically for hemp farmers so that we can apply for those grants, give you guys a plan, and get like $500,000 or $1 million. And I mean, maybe the state can write for a bigger grant with USDA or whoever to be able to provide grants that are where we don't have to, as hemp farmers, compete with everybody else. So we learned that too when we were applying for grants as a Native Hawaiian. The Department of Interior had one that was just for Native Hawaiians, where we didn't have to compete with Native American Indians, Alaskans, and everybody else in the world in the United States. It was just for Hawaiians. Maybe we can get one that's for hemp. But equipment that we need, and we can have a better, more in-depth conversation after with my agronomist here in town. But threshers, harvesting equipment for hemp that attaches to the tractors. We need seed dryers. We need, of course, the decortitators. But instead of the state really figuring out who's going to buy it, where you're going to put it, because warehouse space is crazy. We just had to give up our warehouse space from the ADC because they found lead-based paint in it. It wasn't detrimental to humans, but the state being, so afraid of liability, we got kicked out of a really inexpensive warehouse space. So now we have to build on the farm. But we have to look at some regulations so we can relax it so we can make structures on the farm to process without paying $2 to $3 a square foot for a 6,000 square foot building, But yeah, that's what we need. And we're not theoretical. As you guys can see, we're planting, I could probably do 15 acres of hemp right now, but we're doing smaller lots so that in case there's disease or infestation or the crop fails, we didn't lose 20 acres at one time. So anybody can come up here from the state, Shar and whoever, and I got the professionals right here that are growing fiber, herd, mixing, hempcrete, paper. We had a gallon of hemp milk that was supposed to come, but I think my son drank it. So, but anyway, we're doing it, so it's here. And I don't worry about THC until I have to test my plants. So USDA never gives me any hassles. As long as I file within 30 days of where we're planting hemp, and then we do our testing, and that's it. So that's why I stay away from cannabinoids and anything that goes in your mouth, because all we do is we plant, we harvest, we process, and try to make something out of it. So anyway, thanks. That's for me.
But you select seeds that are known to be low in THC.
Oh yeah, that's the only kind we get. In fact,
Yeah.
my seed supplier from China is here today. He's actually getting lunch, I think. But yeah,
Oh.
you want to talk to the guy? He's right here. He's one of the biggest seed suppliers to America, Canada Hemp Company. So anyway, yeah, we're doing it. We just need the funding. Whether it's grant or you guys are going to buy it, go ahead. But there's a lot of other things, attachments. Once this thing grows, we have to have a way to harvest it. And the first 4 rows right here inside of my grow is actually Asian vegetables. I think it's bok choy inside there. And then we just had the kids plant watermelon, sunflower seeds, and kalo right next to our hemp field. So yeah, it's very diversified here.
Nice.
But we can have a longer conversation. I don't know how long the call can be, but I just want to spit that out because I'm a fiber grower for industrial hemp, and it's pretty simple for us to do it. But the thing is a lot of this comes out of my pocket personally to
And
fund
that's
all of
what
it.
we're trying to put together for you guys is
Yeah.
what it looks like, what you guys need. And I agree. I think grants will be a huge part of it. And I just want to reiterate, yesterday I spoke in front of Maui County about hemp more at a localized level. But I think another part of the conversation, not necessarily this one for this report, is county level and how the county can support, because from what we're understanding is the county is really supportive in Maui of hemp. And there was a meeting on the Big Island yesterday about hemp as well, and they're very supportive there. I'm not sure how Oahu is, but I think you've got obviously the federal level that there's not much we can do about. We've got the state level, which we can try, and then the county level, I think you can get even deeper and more precise on some grants as well. So I think there's opportunity, like you said, at kind of all these different levels to support the farmers.
Yeah, I was on the call with the Big Island yesterday to talk about the hemp fiber growing, and very supportive. I know they want to talk to me about workforce development. As you can see, I got 20 teenagers here learning about farming and also introducing them to hemp, so they're not too illiterate later on in the future about hemp and marijuana, and that hemp isn't that bad. There's good stuff. And then also the city council members, Calvin Say, Weir for this area, and Augie T and Tommy Waters are all supposed to come up here and visit from the city council for Oahu, and my friend from my rep from Waimanalo. So so we're trying to get our city council on board, and my partner in the hemp home building is River Young, which is on Kauai, and that's who we partnered up to grow the 1,000 acres for, to provide them, because they have things going on with their city council, their council members right now. So, but yes, for fiber, any questions on what we need, come visit the farm. It's all right here. You'll see where we're lacking, but I'm not waiting for funding. I'm just going to do it and just start making it. So when you get funding later through grants, I think that'll be cool, because I don't want to be cutting in front of line and saying, hey, we want the processor here rather than there, and I'll just go get my own, so that we're not fighting over equipment.
So Scotty, to visit the farm, what do I have to do?
Take down the address, 1325 Whitmore Ave. We're all the way up in the back. Just text me on when you want to come, and I'll be here.
And text you, get the number from Honolulu Adventures.
808-450-4244. I put my number on Facebook. CIA doesn't have to track me down. They can just check my Facebook to see what I'm doing.
All right,
And
thanks.
it's in Wahiawa, right? On Oahu.
It's in Wahiawa. Yep,
Yeah.
all the way at the end of the
Right
road
in the
before
middle.
the military base. And we're right on the opposite side of the Christmas tree farm up here.
1325 Whitmore?
Whitmore Ave, yep. Past the village. So we have our seeds were just planted yesterday. We got food, we're doing processing. I got people's been doing fiber for 6 years. Our agronomists and our seed guys are in town till Tuesday, I think.
Till Tuesday. That the ones from South Bend?
Nope. One of them is he's in Arizona now, but he's the actual agronomist for hemp or seeds, our hemp seed grow. And then the actual CEO for Kanda Hemp is here. You can Google Kanda, Kanda. That's the seed company that we're working with to grow our own batch of industrial hemp seeds here in Hawaii, so we can start exporting them. And then so that way it doesn't have to come from China. But
Nice.
all the fiber after we harvest the seed is going to go into hempcrete. She has samples of hemp wood here, hemp grain. We're doing paper right now, hemp paper project with the kids, and then a couple of other stuff we're doing here. They're just going crazy. So
So
anyway, sorry, we're excited. I'm just glad to have been on the farm doing this call, so I can show you guys that. Because
nice.
after the call yesterday with Big Island, there's like, oh, when do we get started? I told them we're already started. You know, you guys just get the funding and get us an end user that's gonna, take our hempcrete and build homes with it, so they can work on the building codes right now.
Yep.
So, Shar and Megan, we got to do something like this on Maui.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
and we have our first workforce development team that started 2 years ago when I sent my farmers to South Bend and they built their hempcrete guard shack. And we've been doing workforce development to educate the workers in the future of hemp. So they've been mixing hempcrete, they've been doing the paper, the seeding, the harvesting to create that workforce in the future for hemp, because we're really serious about this becoming not only a phytoremediation of healthy soils, but using all of that for end products in the future. And when we can square away the cannabinoid and CBD side, that'll be great, because I got like 30 different products in my house sitting in a box, from salves to, all kinds of stuff. But they're all made up in Oregon, So, but there's a lot of products that can be made, but it's just too touchy of a thing with CBD. Fiber is a lot easier.
So I'd like to ask Jediah a question. Jediah, last week on the call, you had said that you were there to process cannabinoid hemp for anybody that wanted to do it, and yet you haven't had any takers for that.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think some of the issues surrounding that were that a lot of individuals wanted the raw oils. So, we would act as a toll processor and process it into distillates, and then be able to ship it back to them so they could manufacture their own products.
Right. Yep.
But under the current law, we can't do that because those intermediary products, whether it's distillate, primarily distillate, test over 0.3%.
But I understood Greg last week to say that as long as you have a processing license and you're in the process, that doesn't matter. It can be
As long as
high,
it's right, I think that as long as it stays on site.
as long as it stays on site. Okay.
Yeah, so the
can't
second it
transport
leaves
it.
your facility, you cannot.
I
Oh,
see.
yeah.
So if a person brought you a batch of hemp to process, they couldn't take it back to their facility to make it into a product.
In the distillate form, no. And so they would basically, be stuck with one of the products that we are able to create here in the facility, which might not be what they want to ultimately end up doing.
Right. So that would be the same if we were to set up processing plants. That's exactly the same problem there.
As long as, I mean, if you wanted to then take those oils and move them off of the site, and they're over 0.3%, yes, that's correct. So yeah, if you were to create a large processing facility, it'd have
But
to be-
am I right, Greg? It's not really an issue if we had some kind of distillation facility, let's say like Char was mentioning earlier on Big Island, farmers that are USDA certified could bring it in, process it there, and then with the understanding it's just a temporary intermediate product, and then we could, and as long as we made those products in a place that, met all the rules, we would be fine. There's nothing that precludes us from farmers being able to access some kind of equipment like that. Is that correct, Greg?
Well, without boxing myself into a untenable space here, the last year, Judd, correct me if I'm wrong here, but this is the term that the law landed on was crude extract, hemp crude extract specifically. And the law specifically says that extract must still be below 0.3. And again, just keep in mind, guys, this isn't a DOH like thing. It's coming from law enforcement, because that crude still has to leave that facility as hemp. It can't leave that facility as not hemp, meaning cannabis, higher in THC than 0.3. So the law, so we have to write rules though before this is allowed to happen, and that's what Judah, you're waiting on, of course, and we're very close to getting this done. There'll be a separate set of lower testing standards. What I mean by lower, just less rigorous, because the crude oil is not fit for human consumption yet. The whole idea is it's extracted one time for initial extraction. You can filter and remove chlorophyll and waxes and the things that you don't really want, and you're probably gonna have to dilute it down, because you could probably, the concentration will have probably popped up above 0.3. There'll be a very minimum testing standard and a very basic label to then sell that not fit for human consumption yet crude extract, and you can only sell it to another licensed DOH licensed hemp processor for further processing into a finished product, or you can sell it out of state to another jurisdiction in another state that allows that legally it's allowed to be sold there to them. So it allows for an export of the hemp crude as well as the sale within the state to someone who's licensed to be in receipt of it. But the 0.3 has to be respected at all times when it leaves the facility, right? When it leaves the DOH permitted facility. And again, that's a law enforcement stipulation. It's not something that we're, because it's not fit for human consumption yet. So that would have to be an agreement or a change in law ultimately, if that is a hurdle. But the idea is that the crude needs to be diluted back down so it could move through to the next permitted processor to make a finished cannabinoid product.
Thank you. I just want to chime in because it's already 1:21, and I just wanted to bring up something really quickly that Rob from Hawaiian Choice and I were talking about yesterday, about just a clarification in a bill. It's the wording that's kind of holding back on the gummy side of things. So I just wanted him to speak really quickly to that, just so everyone's aware. And then if Greg wants to pop in to kind of reiterate, but I just wanted to bring that up before the end of our meeting, because I know we have about 8 minutes left. So Rob, if you're on here and you want to speak to that, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Char and Megan, for all the work that you're doing. My name is Rob Bramlett. I'm the Director of Education for Hawaiian Choice and Rare Cannabinoid Company. And so we're a local manufacturer of CBD and cannabinoid products. But one thing I want to highlight and just bring to everybody's attention, just take a couple minutes, is that one actionable item that we can have on this report, and that Megan's been so helpful with, and I want to make everyone aware of, is that the Department of Health has been very helpful in the last 2 years. 2 years ago, the GALE and the Hemp Farmers Association worked hard to get it put into the Department of Health's court. They were allowed to decide what edible products would be allowed, right? And so we worked with them very hard, and Greg and Liam do a great job of clarifying when you have questions about what needs to be done. So then 2023 session went through, and so we had SB 3138 and HB 2449. So it was a dual bill, and it was sort of the Department of Health said, look, we need to fix an error in the definition of hemp. And so it was just essentially like a clerical error, faced no opposition. And again, I'm going to pass it off to Greg in case I get anything wrong here, but it faced no opposition. And if you were in the hearings, which I was, there was no opposition to it. And basically what it would have done is given the Department of Health the ability to go and do what we thought they could do 2 years ago, right, when we got that bill passed. So I encourage everyone to just be aware that we were this close to being able to have sellable gummy edible products, that the Department of Health was going to be able to tell us what an allowable product was. And that was going to really allow CBD companies, especially local companies like Kauai Hemp and ourselves, then what we could do is make a product that could then be sold openly and allowably, and it would make the Department of Health, it would help them do their job, right? Because they could train their staff to go out and say, here's what a good product looks like and a bad product looks like. And essentially, we got all the way, 99% of the way there, and then it just died in committee. So I want to just make everyone aware that's here that that's what happened. There was no opposition. This should have been something that you think would be simple, but it was by no fault of the Department of Health. We need to make sure that when these bills, if we're able to get them up again next year, that if you guys have the ears of these representatives and folks who are in these committees, that you say, look, this is so important, because 99%, in fact, all the products that you see out there with the marijuana leaves and the stoned Hawaiian punch guy, those are all mainland companies who do not care about our kids and our rules. And so it's imperative that when this bill comes back up, you emphasize to whoever you have the ear of to please don't let it die in committee again, because it's something that I know is a little different and doesn't affect everyone, but we believe that the rising tide will lift all boats. And then some of these companies can come back again, because gummies, we're in 44 states. Right, we're based in Manoa, but we're in 44 states, and we can tell you, we got the data. Gummies sell, whether there's THC in them or not. Gummies sell. When there's a low dose, microdose THC, gummies sell. But the Department of Health isn't going to let all these high dose THC products run wild. And so these measures that died last year, again, I'll say it again, it's SB 3138 and House HB 2449. No opposition, died in committee. So when you see them again, just remember that those are super important to the overall industry, so that legal products can be here, and places like ABC Store and just things like that can support local companies and put local products out there on the shelf. And Greg, if you have anything to add, if I butchered anything, I apologize, but that's the gist of it. So thank you for giving me a few minutes, everyone. Thank you.
Rob, I forgot the marijuana bill numbers. Are you referring to the marijuana bill numbers?
No, this is not legal rec related at all.
Okay.
This is
I'm
simply,
sorry, I just couldn't remember the numbers.
Yeah, so this is simply to help clarify the wording and the definition, so that the Department of Health can do what we thought they could do 2 years ago, which is decide what is an allowable edible product. Please, Greg, please.
Yeah, real quick. I know time is short. I want to respect everyone's time here. Rob, great summary. Thank you. Just to be clear, the change in the law that gave us the authority to add new products, for example, like a gummy, just came a year ago. That was part of Act 263. That was became law in July. So it hasn't even been technically quite a year. So we identified the definition of manufactured hemp product, right? We started the conversation with that definition. The definition of manufactured hemp product was amended a year ago in a way by the legislature. It wasn't us. We proposed a slightly different definition, but when you read it in a very technical standpoint, when you read it, it actually doesn't allow us to do what the authority that the legislature gave us. There's clear legislative intent in Act 263 that allows the department now, given a year ago, right? That now allows us to consider in rules, using rules, say, hey, gummies are now allowed, and here's the criteria that would be allowed. I'm just giving you an example of something that's currently not allowed, gives us that authority. However, it still has to meet the definition of a manufactured hemp product. That gummy won't meet that definition because they changed the word and or, and legal attorneys got together and they're like, oh man, they messed it up a little bit. Not intentional. So we identified that. We came forward with a governor package bill to correct it. It sailed through and it stopped in the agriculture committee on the House side after crossover and just died. And I have no idea why. So ask for your support when we, if it gets brought up again next year. But thank you, Rob, for that summary.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. And the why it died, I've tried to look into it, and what I've concluded is the why doesn't matter so much as that we all are aware that it was this close, and that it's clear that it was not the Department of Health holding things up in this example. So the Department of Ag, we all know people in those committees. So when it comes up again, we didn't realize there was any reason to need to call and bother them all because there was no objection. So when it comes up again, I just implore all of you that, even though it doesn't affect you directly right now today, it will actually allow the Department of Health the ability to go out there and give us room to breathe, because we're doing so well in so many states, and we used to have such a large presence in the state of Hawaii. And so right now, our busiest store in Hawaii is the airport, because they're actually under federal rules, not state of Hawaii. So it's so important that the Department of Health be able to do their jobs to then tell us, those of us who are trying to be the good guys, tell us this is what a legal gummy looks like, and then we can all go make it, right? And so thank you so much for your time. The work that you guys are doing is incredible. I'm sorry if I spoke too long, but thank you guys.
Just clarify real quick, the definition that we were proposing last year didn't say allows gummies. Just to be clear, it didn't say allows gummies. It just released the pressure valve.
Right.
And so we could allow different forms. For example, a gummy. Didn't say the
Right.
director was immediately going to put gummies into rules. So just be really, really clear about that.
Yep.
But
It was
we
going to
needed that
allow you
release.
guys. It was going to allow you
Yeah.
guys to then go and say, we want to do gummies or whatever you
Yeah.
guys want to put in. You didn't even have that ability because of a typo. I emphasize it's basically a typo that they were trying to fix. But thank you again, Greg. I wouldn't understand it this well without you guys. So Greg and Liam, thank you so much for your help in helping all of us understand these things better.
Here to help. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Sorry, I know there's still some stuff that we need to discuss, obviously. From what I understand, in June, you can confirm this, we're going to have one more meeting on July 1st, where we can discuss more in depth some of these things. And he'll be sending you, I guess, that information, but tentatively July 1st, we'll have our last meeting together to gather any final information. And again, Shar and I, you have our emails. If you don't, then June can get it to you, but feel free to email us at all. Gail, I'll talk to you at 2:30. But anyone else that wants to reach out to us, we have this next week that we're putting everything together. So if there's anything else, we're here for you guys.
I put some infrastructure that I know our farm needs. I mean, we focus on cannabinoids because that's the margins. I mean, we haven't grown for a while now, and because we want to polycrop with food, but we did trial a couple of fiber crops several years ago and made a couple of products. But to be able to do it on any kind of scale, we obviously need equipment or funding. I think Scotty leave? No, I was very curious. Maybe I'll just give him a separate call about how he's able to fund all this, because I think that's the nut most of us have been trying to figure out as small scale farmers. But he's obviously a very good businessman, so we have a lot of respect for, and it was really fun to see that, because I know a lot of people that have been in this hemp game since even the early 90s, looking at how to convert sugarcane. Their vision was exactly, the beginnings of what we're seeing there. So it's incredibly gratifying to be able to see that today. Thank you.
June, do you have anything else that you want to say? Okay, well, it's already 1:33, so I don't want to keep you guys any longer, but tentatively July 1st, we'll have another meeting. And like I said, reach out to Shar or myself with anything else that you want us to know, or we can also hop on a call. So thank all of you guys for all the valuable feedback. We really appreciate all of you contributing to this.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Have a
everyone.
great weekend. Aloha.
Thank you.
Oh.
Great,
Bye.
thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Aloha.